Hi everybody.
Hi everyone.
It's November and this is the update for this month.
We're sitting outside, which is something of an accomplishment in November in Montana.
It's also a really good place to be sitting just to get our attention and looking into this camera to get our attention off of the pre-election weirdness. It's distracting.
Yeah, it's just frenetic energy. It's astonishing. I don't think I've ever been through anything like this, and I'm sure a lot of you haven't either.
We don't even, of course, have any idea if you'll see this before the election, how much bandwidth do any of us have? So that's the question. But that's what's brought up our theme for this month. What's come up is change and stability.
Change and stability. Those are such good topics for all of life on planet Earth. Change and stability. It's a good dance.
Yeah, and the thing is that nothing on Earth exists without both of them. And in times like this, it's easy, at least for me, to be overwhelmed by all the change and all the uncertainty. From one day to the next, what is up top, and human ecologies just shifts so radically that it feels hard to keep up, and it feels very unsettling. It is interesting to note, as we do in a lot of our work in full ecology, that we wouldn't have the opportunity to feel unsettled if there weren't, and especially to complain about it, if there weren't a lot that was working, that was stable.
True that. You were writing earlier this morning, I think, about the notion of wound and medicine being linked, call and response, as if these sort of chaotic times and the remedy for them are all held in some connected fashion.
Yeah, and thank you for your edits on that. That's how we do it. Gary writes, and I read, I write, and he reads. It's good.
Love to
that's
live
the
with
stability, right?
Yeah, we both have each other's editor. That's great. Yeah.
But that is the call and response. That is the stability. It feels like there are a lot of wounds in human community right now, and that humans are being quite wounding, certainly, with regards to what we're doing to the climate. That's not going away, and all of us know that. So what is the stability in that? Where can we stand? Well, the wound calls for a response.
Yeah, that immediately takes me back, and some of you have heard me say this before, about the notion of life on Earth evolving according to a fairly long and very significant and often chaotic string of disruptions. And it very much has to do with what Mary's talking about, the call and response and the wound and the medicine, because those interruptions to life on Earth have forced life to come up with ways of handling whatever's going on. And usually, almost without exception, in fact, the life that results on the far side of the disruption is more diverse, richer, more resilient, and this is how Earth has become increasingly more complex and more full, if you will, and resilient as millions and millions of years have gone on. So there is some possibility in our own upheaval, even self-inflicted upheaval, which is what we're talking about to no small extent. It calls forward this notion, or this opportunity to look and to change our perspective, change our behaviors in ways that better reflect the realities of how we're living in any given moment.
You were telling me something earlier this week about how it is that fish came to develop legs. Do you remember that?
Yeah, this is, of course, only a theory, but it's being proffered by some fairly respectable scientists that it was the moon's growing influence on the Earth, its tidal influence, creating these vast tidal reaches where at various times of the day, of course, the shoreline might be just pockmarked with small little tidal pools, and other times of the day it would be under the water of the ocean. And now there's some thought that the fish, reacting to those periods where water was a bit more scarce, began to develop abilities to move around outside of those isolated pockets during the hours that the tidal influence was at its maximum. It's a fascinating thing to contemplate.
Well, and there you have it again with the change and stability. The stability of the rhythm of the moon. I'm just experiencing so much wild ambient noise around us with motors and crows and all sorts of stuff. That's all.
For everybody.
I think that that's part of what is symptomatic to me right now at these times, is that it's so easy to be distracted, but maybe there is extra noise. Maybe there's not. Maybe there's always this much noise. So this change and stability thing, there's something stable in being able to adapt. In the fish being able to adapt, and there being this evolutionary move. Here's the other truth, though, that all of us are feeling right now. Okay, maybe things can get better, and maybe human beings can, in fact, opt for connection with one another in the fullness of our ecology, rather than for this continued pursuit of the separation myth. It's all about me. Maybe so, but it doesn't feel so good necessarily from moment to moment. It can take a long time. And these days, in this endless, somebody called it the permademic recently,
yes,
and it's not, but it feels that way. And this endless campaign season, oh my goodness, feels like we've been doing it for 8 years.
Well, speaking of 8 years, that's one of the things that kind of lets the air out of whatever comfort you might get in that fish developing legs story, is because that took millions and millions of years.
Right.
And we feel, rightly so, that there are some fairly significant issues that we need to address immediately, climate change being foremost among them. And one of the gifts of the natural world that expresses itself through humans is our ability to engage in reflective thought and learning and attitude adjustment, using our minds basically to adapt to changing circumstances. And so we do have that capacity. It isn't necessarily a task that's going to take us thousands or millions of years to do things right when it comes to healing relationships with the planet.
In particular, if we pay attention to what's around us all the time in the living natural world. Of course, we're living too, and the people who are running that motor behind us are living too. The things that make the motor go aren't necessarily, they are things that we pull together to make function. So what is this in change and stability? The stability is that the natural world, as we've said before, is the most successful system this planet has ever known. And the way we know that is that it continues. And so, in all that changes, to slow a bit and see again and stand confident in what it is that remains stable, that is the invitation. What is it that remains stable? Paradoxically, the stability resides often in that call and response. It resides in the capacity to adapt, and to adapt is to change.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity whenever human culture goes through a very difficult, challenging time, is to stop and consider the task of opening our perspective, breaking the frames around how we thought the world works to see how it really does, and then make adjustments in our own individual lives and the lives of our community. And that's what we've got in our lives right now. We don't have to take advantage of it, but it's, I think, safe to say that the potential breakthroughs are linked to the degree of threat and chaos that we face. So that takes it back to that wound and medicine analogy that Mary was writing about earlier this morning. We really are in the thick of some difficult things, and that could, be interpreted that we also are at the precipice of being able to make breakthroughs in the way we do things that we've not had as a species before.
And all the time, those mountains back there stand. And all the time, the tilt of the Earth's axis continues to be in a way that makes it so that the seasons change in the hemispheres. All the time, this is going on, and these are phenomena we can count on. There is a quieting that seems necessary for us to be able to even hear the call that is going out in an attempt to engage our response. And it's up to us, of course, to respond and to trust that we are able to. There's a lot of things that have been shaken loose by what we've been going through in human ecology. Maybe that can bring us into more alignment with our natural stewardship.
Yes, even our friends with the loud motors going on all around us, those motors wouldn't be working if it wasn't for phytoplankton and trees and plants giving off oxygen, which they need to burn. So, there's really...
That's really true.
Really nothing that is happening around us that would happen if it weren't for these fundamentally resilient, reliable systems that have, in fact, grown and stabilized over time, over many, many hundreds of millions, billions of years.
Yeah, and in change and stability, the other thing that we find ourselves often acknowledging is one of the things that is a part of stability is grief. That's sort of paradoxical in itself. But because we are, as Gary was saying, capable of self-reflection, we know that we and everything we love and care about is going to go eventually. And so there's this, we've been talking about how there's this grief that comes, and we've heard it called ambiguous grief, when we know that what's still here will not be here forever. That is really being brought forward with COVID-19. But the other thing that we've been talking about lately is that there is a kind of ambiguous hope. We're getting plenty of very clear science that shows us that the damage is pretty severe to the climate when it comes to the capacity of human beings, not just to survive, to survive, and not just to repair. And this is not news. And there is a great deal to grieve about that. We elect to not be Pollyanna about this and to admit that, in fact, part of the change that is coming forward has to do with the degradation and the danger in the degradation of the climate. But at the same time, we are here and we are here now. Check some of what Joanna Macy is saying. Watch the newest David Attenborough documentary on this magnificent world. There is reason for us to continue to claim our truest human natures. And that is being told, is being shown us all the time by the natural world around us. So there is constant change, and there is constant stability, and in the end, you can't unweave them. They are completely a tapestry.
I'm glad you mentioned grief, because while I think a lot of us try to avoid situations that spark grief, in the case of us coming to terms with what's going on with the planet and the changes we need to make, I think it's essential. You cannot get the energy of the kinship that exists and the sense of bonding and the commitment to that kinship. That's only available to you, I think, if you can open up to grieving the losses we've already experienced, the losses that will come in the very near future to many, many species. So we can't really move forward with these new opportunities in the midst of this disruption, this chaos, unless we're willing to open ourselves up to the profound connecting energy that grief swings the door open to.
Yeah, we grieve because we love.
Yeah.
And grief actually opens us up to that recognition that we are so in love with one another and with this planet. Not super jazzed about some of the behaviors of some beings, but there you have it. All in all, we grieve because we love. And when we when we accept that there is loss and uncertainty, then on that shimmering edge, we are available to our kinship and to finally trust our lives. So change and stability show us that we really can, that wild thing, we can trust our lives, the life force in us.
Well, I think that's probably enough for today. Anything else on your mind?
We did want to say, we've got a podcast going on. I'm getting to do some interviews with people about social ecology, specifically focused on how people are living with COVID-19. This podcast is called How It Looks From Here. You can find out more about it under our podcast tab on the website, www.fullecology.com. We've got 3 episodes, and there are more on the way, and we've been really excited about it. Music by Gary Ferguson, composed and performed.
The inspiration and I don't know, the beauty of a well-done interview, courtesy of Mary, because she's really in charge of these, and they're great. Not only is she an exquisite interviewer, but the people who she's talking to have things that are really worth hearing. So hope you'll check that out.
Yeah, and if you haven't subscribed, please do. You can find a way to do that at the bottom of the homepage, again on www.fullecology.com. We'll be letting people on that list know when a new podcast is launched, or every time we drop one of those. And other things. So we're probably going to join with the rest of the universe and take a break until January on offering any courses or other gatherings, so we can all gather our wits in this change.
Indeed.
And stability. We'll see about the stability. It's around, no matter what.
Be safe and be well, and thanks for showing up.
Yeah, it's good to see you. We'll see you again soon. Bye for now.